Hello, everybody. Vasu Vaddiparty here with the VPartySports Podcast for this Saturday morning, 9 a.m. on the East Coast, 6 a.m. on the West Coast. Still a little dark out here, as you can see behind me. The shadows still rolling around, but cobwebs not rolling around. Ready to go on this Saturday for NBA basketball, little NHL, a big day of college basketball, a lot of conference games. We'll set you up with all that. The NFL has two games today, two big games. One game for a one seed, one game for a division title. Winner take all. We'll get to all that in a second as well. Don't forget, you can reach us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at VPartySports. On YouTube and Facebook at Vasu Vaddiparty. We're coming back on Sunday with a full NFL preview. We'll talk a little NBA, NCAA, and then the BCS championship between TCU and Georgia Monday night. Of course, daily posts during the week are at 6 Eastern, weekdays, 11 a.m. on the weekends before all the tip-offs and all the kickoffs start for college basketball and the NFL. Of course, we did that during college football as well, too. So we'll have that as well posted on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'll give you a best bet before we get out of here in the next 20 minutes or so for the day, and then I'll add those to them. And then you can always see the replays that follow. We'll have replays until about 11 o'clock Eastern, or actually about 11:30 Eastern, and then I'll have a little post for the best bets in case you missed them. Saturdays are always big with the NCAA. A full day of basketball. They start at 11:30 today. Notre Dame and North Carolina go at 11:30 out east and 8:30 out here on the West Coast. Usually everything doesn't start till noon, but for some reason they're getting the early jump on North Carolina and Notre Dame. If you're interested in sponsorships, please contact me directly through Facebook, through Instagram, YouTube, Twitter as well too. You can reach me at VPartySports, as you see right there. Again, I'm Vasu Vaddiparty. Thank you for joining me on this Saturday as we start the new year. Wanted to get some bookkeeping out of the way. It's going through the totals a little bit, and I appreciate all the support that you've all been giving me, so I want to make sure that I get this right. So, year to date, from last Sunday when the new year turned over, new tracking system, and just like everything else in technology, a little flaw to it, but want to make sure we get them correct here. So, overall, my totals are 26 and 23 for the week. Sounds like a lot of games, but when you break it down, it's not that many. NCAA basketball, a little slow start here with conference play, 8 and 14, but the last day was 4-2 on the 6th, which was Thursday, I believe. Thursday the 5th, 4-2 that day. 1-3 in the NHL, my only foray into the NHL since the year started, and then 0-2 in the college football bowl games. But the big one Monday night with TCU and Georgia. Georgia about a 12.5-point favorite. We'll touch on that a little bit today. Spend more time on it tomorrow. And then on Monday, we'll have a full show with a full preview of TCU and Georgia. How about those games last weekend? I'm sure everybody's still talking about it. Definitely if you're a Michigan and an Ohio State fan, you're probably not interested in that as well. So 0-2 in the college football. But the NBA, here's where we've been going well. 17-4 since last Sunday, 3-2 yesterday, 2-1 Thursday, 5-1 on Wednesday, and then before that it was 7 straight to start the year. So 17-4, something tells me that's pretty good. That's Cy Young material. It's a little early for baseball, but that's Cy Young material. 17-4, 17 out of 21. Overall, the totals are 26 and 23. Plan to improve that. My goal is to get to 68%, 68 to 70%. All right, when we come back, we will set up the NFL. We'll set up the NCAA basketball. We'll get to it in 30 seconds. VPartySports Podcast with Vasu Vaddiparty. Take care. Okay, welcome back to the VPartySports Podcast. A little technical glitch there, so we're back and we're set to go. All right, let's start. You see the NFL lines going at the bottom. Let's start with Saturday football. There's no Thursday night football. I'm sure a lot of you missed it. 2 games today on Saturday. We'll give you the ramifications in a second, but let's hit the 2 games, and I'll touch on the Sunday games here real quick. But the Kansas City Chiefs are -9 at Las Vegas, 52.5. That's the first game of the day 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 on the West Coast. 52.5. The Raiders nearly beat the Chiefs in Kansas City. I want to say about 9 or 10 weeks ago on a Monday night. They had a chance to win it. They lost 30-27. They covered the +7 in that game. The game went over as well, too. Big doings for Kansas City. We'll get to that in a second, but they're playing for a 1 seed. Obviously, what happened last week with Cincinnati and Buffalo, they're only going to be left with 16 games to play. It seems like a normal season with 16 games for those of us that grew up on that scenario. But 17 games, not everybody's playing 17 games. So the Chiefs are 12-3, 13-3. 13-3, looking, if they win, they get the 1 seed. If they lose, then there's a whole different scenario that goes on. The owners voted on that yesterday in terms of how they were going to fix this scenario. I'm sure some of you read about it. I'll try and explain it as best as I can. But really, in the end, just wait till they tell you where you're going to go and where you're going to play. And figure it out. The lines will be up. People will bet on it. And you're in the playoffs. So you can't complain about where you're going to go. Total aberration what happened last Monday night. But Kansas City, a road favorite of 9 points. And they have not covered this year at all. And I know a lot of people very unhappy with the Chiefs. Those big lines, those big point spreads they've had. 9 points, maybe a lot. If anybody saw the Raiders play last week against the 49ers, they covered that 9.5 pretty easy behind Jarrett Stidham at quarterback, since no David Carr anymore for the Raiders defensively. And Josh Jacobs is running the ball well. Kansas City on a roll, looking for the 1 seed at 13-3. Again, the scenarios. Tonight, 8:15 Eastern, both games on ESPN, by the way, 5 o'clock, 5:15 on the West Coast. A winner-take-all game for the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee, 6.5. Actually, let me update this because the line just moved because it's a pretty high line. These are not great teams, but the fact they're fighting out for the AFC South is completely different. All right, there we go. So Jacksonville has moved down to 6.5. It was at 6.5. It opened at 6 and went to 6.5, and then it went up to 7 last night. Now back to 6.5 versus Tennessee. Total is 40 in that game. It's a winner-take-all game. Jaguars are 8-8. They've won 4 in a row. Titans are 7-9. They've lost 6 in a row. And everybody thought this division was over. The Tennessee Titans were 7-3. Jacksonville Jaguars were 2-6. And then there were the Indianapolis Colts and their struggles all year. And then the Colts, Jaguars, Titans, and the other South team, Houston, and the Houston Texans. They were out of it from week 1. So they were looking for a number 1 draft pick starting the year. Although Houston did play well, close out the year. I'm sure they covered on some games that people thought they weren't going to cover. The Dallas game specifically, the Kansas City game, another one at home for them. But anyway, Jacksonville, Tennessee, no one thought this was going to be a winner-take-all game. The loser will not make the playoffs because there's too many losses for this. Tennessee has 9 losses. Jacksonville has 8 losses. Jacksonville thumped Tennessee 4 weeks ago in Tennessee. They beat them 36-22. So they have the head-to-head advantage here in this game. So if Tennessee wins, they'll be tied in record, but they'll have the division record based on this win over Jacksonville. So it is a pure winner-take-all for the AFC South. Only one team out of that division. The Wildcards will probably have a better record than the winner out of this division. 6.5. Joshua Dobbs going to start for Tennessee. He's their third-string quarterback. Played well against Dallas. Not great, but they're going to have to rely on Derrick Henry, who's back this week, to try and run the ball. Jacksonville, not a great defense, but 6.5. So check it out on the best bets. I might have a play on this later at 11 o'clock Eastern on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'll give you the best bets, but I'll give you one bonus one when we close the show out. All right, so Jacksonville, Tennessee. Sunday, Pittsburgh, Cleveland. Pittsburgh mathematically still in it. They need the Patriots and I'll tell you in a second. They need the Patriots and the Dolphins to lose. They've lost to both teams, so they need both of them to lose and a win over Cleveland to be able to get into the playoffs. So that's kind of a tall task. Indianapolis, Houston, nobody cares. Atlanta, -4 versus Tampa Bay. That's going to be interesting because Todd Bowles said they're going to play their starters for the first half. This is why Atlanta's favored, because they're going to the backups. We know Tampa Bay's struggles on offense, 40.5 the total. If they play their starters in the first half and the way they came back on Carolina and sit them in the second half, the South is wrapped up in the NFC. Carolina had a chance last week. This could have been a great week with New Orleans, Carolina, and Atlanta, Tampa Bay closing out the NFC South. But Tampa Bay did come back. They did win the division. Nothing to play for today. But if they start their starters in the first half, Would you out there, and I want to hear your comments on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, would you take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at +2 or +2.5 in the first half? Probably if they're starting. It might even be a pick 'em or a +1. Would you take Tampa Bay in the first half? I'd be very interested to see what the viewership is and what the listenership says about Atlanta, Tampa Bay. New Orleans, Carolina. Carolina had a chance to win. Sam Darnold fumbled twice late in the game. Tampa Bay won that game. Here's the story of the week. Obviously, everybody knows the Damar Hamlin story. We'll update you on that. He's breathing on his own, 100%. No oxygen tube, communicating with his family, communicated via Zoom with his teammates. The Buffalo Bills, and I don't know the name of the stadium. They don't pay me, so I don't know the sponsorship. As far as I'm concerned, it's still Orchard Park Stadium, Bills Stadium, whatever it is. No sponsorships here unless they call me. 7-point favorite versus New England, 43.5. New England wins, they're in. They haven't clinched the spot yet. They lose, and Miami wins, they're in. And then, of course, if they both lose, then Pittsburgh's in, as I said. How lit is this stadium going to be knowing how healthy Damar Hamlin is and the fact that he's 100% on his own, oxygen, breathing-wise. Now, he's got a long way to recover, and the Bills did put him on injured reserve, so he's done. His career, worry about that later. The fact that he's alive, the fact that he didn't die on the field in front of everybody, and all you conspiracy theorists, you can save it. We have that all week. But how lit is Buffalo going to be this weekend? And I would not want to be the Patriots going into Buffalo this weekend. Boy, I can see Josh Allen and everybody with that enthusiasm drop 70 points on New England. I don't think that'll happen, but you can see it happening with the momentum and the enthusiasm that Buffalo has. Buffalo's still playing for the 1 seed. Of course, they're going to be 1 game short. If they win and Kansas City loses, they've still got a shot at the 1 seed. Of course, Cincinnati does too, which is the next game that we're going to get to. But the Buffalo Bills, good news from Damar Hamlin. They've got New England on Sunday. Really, really, really hot atmosphere. Bills Mafia came through all week. Other NFL fans came through all week. The NFL is celebrating his recovery. Every 3 on the 30-yard line will be in Buffalo colors in honor of Damar Hamlin as well too. But a big game for Buffalo. Now they can focus on possibly getting that 1 seed, or else probably finishing in the two spot. Cincinnati, they play Baltimore. Very tricky situation for them. They're a 9-point favorite versus Baltimore. It was 10. It went down. No Lamar Jackson. Here's the scenario for the Baltimore Ravens. They've already beaten Cincinnati this year. If they played 17 games, they ended up tied, they would have the tiebreaker if they beat Cincinnati because of the head-to-head matchup. Cincinnati has already clinched the division, but here's the scenario. And again, we'll break it down a little bit later. But basically, if these two end up in a wild card game, if Baltimore loses and the Chargers win, they would fall to the 6th spot, and Cincinnati would be the 3 spot. They would play in a wild card game that would be determined by a coin flip as to where the game will be played, whether it be Cincinnati or Baltimore, because if Baltimore wins, they would have the head-to-head tiebreaker. So the coin flip would be necessary. Now, if Cincinnati wins, I believe the game's going to be played in Cincinnati because of the higher record and the higher winning percentage. Again, Buffalo and Cincinnati only going to have 16 games this year. Not since 1935 has there been a season where teams have had different number of games played. It happens in baseball every once in a while. Doesn't happen in the NBA. Doesn't happen in hockey. So that's the interesting scenario. Minnesota Vikings are a 6-point favorite at Chicago. They were an 8-point favorite, but they've had 1-score games this whole year. So that line was going to come down. No Justin Fields for Chicago. Nathan Peterman going for the Bears. The line still went down, -6. Vikings could fall to the 3 seed with the 49ers and Eagles playing on Sunday as well. 42.5 the total here. Lots of scenarios. The 49ers have the tiebreaker over every NFC team in contention for that 1 spot. But the Vikings could fall to 3, or they could stay in 2. They do not have a chance to get to 1. Philadelphia beat them already. Depending on what Philadelphia does, actually, they have 4 losses. Philadelphia has 3, so there's no chance for them to get to the 1 seed. So that's where we're at there. The last 1 o'clock game on Sunday will be the Miami Dolphins, a huge game for them. The Jets, 37 the total. Miami needs to win this game versus the Jets. No Tua Tagovailoa, no Teddy Bridgewater. It's going to be Skylar Thompson, the 3rd-string quarterback, starting for the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins fans very shaky. I don't think that's a good thing that they did not bring Tua back. He's going through all this concussion protocol. Not a good scenario for the Miami Dolphins right now. They need the win they need the Patriots to lose as well, too, for them to get in that 7th spot. Remember, they started off hot this year. They were 6-2, and they had beaten a couple of teams. They beat New England early in the year, but they lost to New England last week by 2 points. Those of you that had the Patriots minus 2.5, like I did not miss the extra point by Nick Folk, cost the minus 2.5 spread for the Patriots. Again, wagering show here. We look at these things. 37 the total. Late afternoon games on Sunday. Big game in Seattle. Seahawks favored by 6 over the Baker Mayfield-led Rams. 41.5 now. Scenario for the Seattle Seahawks. They have to win. I'll tell you why in a second, but they have to win in order to even have a chance to have a playoffs. And I'll tell you why in a second, because the Green Bay Packers and Detroit Lions will play later. We'll get to that in a second. That's the night game. That's the one that the NFL decided to put on Sunday night. Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers versus the Detroit Lions. Let me set this up here so it's consistent. When you don't have a producer, you got to do all this stuff on the fly. Here we go. All right, now we're correct. All right, Seattle 6 over the Rams, 41.5. Philadelphia, interesting situation. They had the number 1 seed locked up a few weeks ago, but now there's a lot of controversy on the way they played the last 2 weeks. Jalen Hurts is trending up as he's going to start. They play the Giants. It's a rivalry. Giants are locked into the 6th seed. Do they play everybody or not? Do they stay everybody healthy? Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, the whole defense. They played better this year. They locked into the 6th spot. 43 the total in that game. Looks like Hurts will play 2-touchdown favorite. See how that goes. If they win, they capture the 1 seed. If the 49ers, let's see, if they lose and the 49ers win against Arizona, which is the next game on the board, 2-touchdown favorite there versus Arizona, 39 the total. Philadelphia lost, the 49ers win. All of a sudden, the San Francisco 49ers have the 1 seed, which is huge considering how bad they started off the year. Now they're on a streak of, I think, 9 in a row or something like that. 3 and 4. Yeah, 9 in a row. They're plus 148 in point differential. Only Dallas is even close in that regard, is in terms of point differential. As I look, Buffalo has the most point differential, plus 157. That's going to go up with New England. So the 49ers, this situation, how much do you play Brock Purdy? How much do you play the rest of the team? Are you going to be happy with a 2 seed? You still get 2 home games. Denver minus 3 versus the Chargers. Chargers are locked into the 6th seed. They're not moving anywhere. Don't know how much they'll play Justin Herbert. Tough game to wager on. We'll have more on that on Sunday as well, too. Dallas Cowboys 7 at Washington. Cowboys have a chance at the NFC East. Didn't think so 3 weeks ago. Eagles lose. Cowboys have the better division record. I believe that's the first tiebreaker. Yeah, the Cowboys win and the Eagles lose. They'll win the NFC East, and Philadelphia will drop down to the 5 seed because you have to have a division winner. Tampa Bay, even with a worse record, is still going to be the 4 seed. So that's what we've got going on. The Green Bay-Detroit scenario, we'll touch into that a lot more tomorrow. But basically, Detroit needs Seattle to lose, and they've got to beat Green Bay in Green Bay. They've already beaten Green Bay this year. If those 2 things happen, the Detroit Lions will be in the playoffs for the 3rd time in the last 30 years. Green Bay will be gone. Seattle will be gone. And it'll be the Detroit Lions and the Fighting Dan Campbells in the playoff scenario. So that's what we've got going in the NFL. A full preview of every game. Again, the coin flips. Let's see if we got that. Chiefs and Raiders. If the Chiefs lose to the Raiders, motion all sorts of contingencies for the 1 seed. Cincinnati hosts Baltimore, as we said. Buffalo will be lit because of DeMar Hamlin. Boy, if they put him on Zoom in front of that Bills Mafia crowd, 80,000 people in Orchard Park, New York, oh my God, that place would go wild to see him on the screen. Unbelievable. And of course, the AFC South tonight, the winner take all between Jacksonville and Tennessee. Joshua Dobbs for the Titans. Jags have won 4 in a row. Titans, what happened to them? 6 in a row. But they've got Derrick Henry tonight. And in the wild card scenarios, the Patriots, Dolphins, Steelers all in the hunt. Pats with the advantage right now as well, too. And then Philadelphia hosts the Giants. The 49ers have a chance of the 1 seed. Dallas doesn't have a chance for the 1 seed, but they've got the NFC title looking up. And then we just talked about the wild card with Green Bay hosting Detroit. The Packers win, and they're in. Doesn't matter what Seattle does in that scenario. Seattle needs to win and then hopes that the Detroit line – well, actually, they've got to win and hope that Detroit loses. Actually, Let me see it here. I'm trying to think here because Seattle, they have to win, and they'll eliminate the Lions. That's right. They beat Detroit earlier. So Green Bay has to win. If Green Bay wins, then they will. Well, that's going to be a tough scenario for Seattle. I don't know how Seattle can get in. They said Seattle still has a shot, but I'm not sure how they have a shot because if they win, they'll eliminate the Lions. And then Green Bay will get into the 7th spot if they lose. That's going to be a tough scenario. So we'll see how it goes because I can't see how they're going to be in the playoffs. Let me see here. Let me look this up here because we had it all set up here. They eliminate Green Bay. Oh, Detroit will eliminate Green Bay. And Detroit wins the tiebreaker over Green Bay based on a head-to-head percentage. Win tiebreaker over Lions. Oh, they'll win the tiebreaker. If they win and Detroit wins, Detroit will still be eliminated because Detroit lost to Seattle early in the year. There you go. That's it. And then Seattle hosts the Rams, as we said. All right, we got that all squared away. More to come on Sunday with the NFL. We're going to hit college basketball in a little bit. The owners voted on the scenarios. We'll detail all that. A lot of coin flips involved. AFC Championship could be a neutral site. Bills-Bengals could be a neutral site if they play in a wild card game as well, too. All right, 30 seconds. We'll be back with the NBA. We'll touch on college basketball. We'll have replays following all the way up until tip-off at 11:30 this morning. Give you the best bets. One best bet now, and then print it up on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for your best bet segment. Vasu Vaddiparty here, the VPartySports Podcast. If you're looking for sponsorships, please contact me directly, and we will be back in 30 seconds with the touch on the NBA, NCAA basketball, a huge conference day in NCAA basketball. We'll hit them all conference by conference, and then we'll hit the NHL a little bit before we get out of here on this Saturday. Thanks to everybody for your support. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Leave your comments there. Love to have questions. We'll talk about it all when we come back in 30 seconds. Big college basketball day, big NBA day, and a little NHL as well, too. Vasu Vaddiparty here on the VPartySports Podcast. Back in 30 seconds. Welcome back to the VPartySports Podcast. About 9:30 on the East Coast, 6:30 on the West Coast. So a little dark out here on the West Coast, but you can reach me at VPartySports on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, Vasu Vaddiparty, and YouTube as well, too. This is the VPartySports Podcast. I am your host, Vasu Vaddiparty. All right, we touched on the NFL. The two big games today, the Kansas City Chiefs visiting Las Vegas. They're a 9-point favorite, 52.5. I think I saw the total. And it hasn't changed. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars, that line moves up from 6, through 6.5 to 7, back to 6.5. The total 40. Third-string quarterback for the Titans going in Joshua Dobbs. Jaguars have won 4 straight. Titans have lost 6 straight. That's a winner-take-all for the AFC South tonight. All right, in the NBA, you see the ticker going across. Big games last night in the NBA. We'll talk about it. 3-2 for me last night. Pacers, Bulls, Knicks. The Pelicans lost. The over on the Pistons and Spurs, 6 points short. 236. A lot of high totals in the NBA. It's pretty tough to go over and under with the 230s and 240s happening. The Laker game went over last night at 242, barely. 130 to 114 Lakers. Miami Heat beat the Suns 104 to 96. Denver continues to roll. They come back on Cleveland. Timberwolves continue to hurt the Clippers. No Paul George, no Kawhi Leonard. The Thunder get a 17-point win over the Bradley Beal-less Wizards. The Hornets dropped 51 points on the Bucks in Milwaukee. They have not played well this year. And the Charlotte Hornets, a 10-point underdog, 10-29 coming into the game. The Bucks 25-13 coming into the game. And yet The Charlotte Hornets drop 138 points on the Milwaukee Bucks, 138-109 in that game. That's probably the biggest surprise of the night. Knicks beat the Raptors by 4. The Bulls come back on the Sixers. No Embiid last night. They were a 4-point underdog. Pacers come back on Portland. Portland really struggles on the road. And Indiana's a very good team at home in the NBA. Keep looking at that. I'm looking at that. As I said, I'm 17-4 year to date in the NBA, so follow my NBA picks. But I'm going to get hot in college basketball because today, a big college basketball day. We'll get to that in a second. But let's hit the NBA for today. Boston and San Antonio. Boston, a road favorite. They thumped Dallas 2 nights ago. They're in San Antonio. San Antonio, not playing very well defensively, but they can score a little bit. 12.5 there for Boston on the road, 234.5. Utah, this line started out last night at Chicago -1, coming off their win. No respect. They get a win at Philadelphia, and then they come home to play Utah. I know Lauri Markkanen dropped 49, but that was the Houston Rockets. The Bulls are now a 1-point underdog, just like that overnight, 237 the total in that game. Mavericks, after their thumping by the Celtics, they're a 7-point favorite over the Pelicans. Pelicans should have had that win against Brooklyn last night, even without Zion Williamson. 7-point favorite for Dallas at home, 225.5. Golden State Warriors, they lost to the Pistons. I almost said the Lions. Pistons the other night on a game-winning 3 by Saddiq Bey. -7 versus Orlando, 231.5. And then the Kings, 8.5 versus the Lakers. Lakers playing well, 4 in a row. They've been an underdog at home this whole week. They've beaten Miami. They beat Atlanta. And they were on the road. And they had another win as well, too. So they are on a roll right now. The Lakers are. Makes me happy. They're still out of the playoff spot. They've won 4 in a row. They're still giving up 117 points a game, but they're an 8.5-point underdog to the very surprising Sacramento Kings, who are in the 5th spot in the Western Conference. So you see those lines go by. We'll get to the college basketball in a second, but some of those NBA games, I'll give you a best bet later in terms of best bets at 11 o'clock Eastern on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, but a free one coming up at the end of the show. Let's hit the college basketball scene here real quick. Conference play all over the place this week. We'll start with the ACC. UNC Notre Dame, that's the early game. That starts at 11:30, 8:30 on the West Coast. Everything else starts at noon or later. North Carolina started off hot. Notre Dame lost early in the week this week, but they came back, and they're going to try and take on a Tar Heel team that can score. Notre Dame does not push the ball up, so it's maybe a tough task for them going into Chapel Hill. Duke and Boston College, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Louisville, Pittsburgh, Clemson. That's a good matchup. Both teams are undefeated in conference play. The Pitt Panthers and the Clemson Tigers, Brad Bronwell at Clemson, they got a big win at Virginia Tech as a 6-point underdog early in the week, 141.5 the total there, 2.5-point underdog. The Virginia Cavaliers, 11-point favorite over Syracuse. Never know what Syracuse, because that's a lot of points for a Syracuse team. Jim Boeheim, you got to give him a lot of respect. He gets his guys to play. And Virginia Tech, 5.5. They've had a good year. North Carolina State has also had a pretty good year this year. They just thumped Duke during the week. So that's your ACC. Big Ten, 3 games today. Nebraska -3.5 at Minnesota. Minnesota's struggling. Nebraska got beat up by Michigan State early in the week. Illinois, can't tell which Illinois team's going to be there. In Wisconsin, they like to slow the ball down. That total at 131.5. Illinois -7 versus Wisconsin. And then the big one at noon today, rivalry weekend, early for the state of Michigan. Of course, Wolverines out of the football picture, but they're visiting East Lansing against their rivals, Michigan State. Michigan State, a 4-point favorite, coming off that Nebraska win, 138 the total. Michigan comes off a home win versus Penn State. In the Big 12, Texas, a 2.5-point favorite at OSU. Of course, Chris Beard got fired now. The domestic violence allegations, enough for the University of Texas Board of Regents to fire him. They're going to either search for a new coach, let the interim coach go right now. But they're at Oklahoma State, 141.5. TCU, what a game they had against Baylor early in the week. 6-point underdog against Baylor. They get a game winner at the end. 6-point favorite against Iowa State, who's played really well. They beat Oklahoma early in the week. Kansas got a big win at where were they? They were at I had the game too. They were 1-point favorite. I can't remember where they were, but they got a late dunk at the end to cover the spread at West Virginia. Oh, it was Texas Tech. That's what it was. They were a 1-point favorite. Texas Tech had the game. Kansas comes back and covers the -1. They're at West Virginia, who's had a pretty good year to start. Only a 2-point favorite, 144. Is it only 2 points, or is West Virginia pretty good? Baylor 6.5 versus Kansas State. Kansas State just put up 145 points, 115 points on the University of Texas. That is unheard of in college basketball. 147.5 the total. And then Texas Tech, we talked about their loss to Kansas. They've got Oklahoma, 5.5-point favorite there. In the Big East, UConn, a 3-point favorite over Creighton. UConn has lost 2 in a row after starting the season undefeated. Now they're already middle of the pack in the Big East conference-wise. They've got Creighton, who's played better than last week. Providence, they are red hot. They just beat up Xavier early in the week as an underdog. -7, 153 there. Georgetown has not won a conference game in a year and a half, and it shows the way they played against Villanova. But they're on the road, 18.5-point. That's a lot of points, 18.5 points for Marquette versus Georgetown. Villanova, 2.5 over Xavier. And then Seton Hall versus Butler, 4.5 for Seton Hall. They've struggled early. Pac-12, Cal beat up on Stanford, surprisingly. 9-point underdog for Cal last night in Berkeley, and they take out Stanford big time, 92-70. Today we got Arizona, -13 against Washington State. Utah, 5.5 after their big win versus Oregon State. Thursday, they've got Oregon. And then Colorado hosting Oregon State, 13.5 points. The Buffaloes playing well this year. You see the NBA lines going across as well, too, 7 games. We'll hit a little hockey before we close out. The SEC, Missouri, they played really well this year. They nearly took out Arkansas on the road early in the week. 9-point favorite versus Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's been pretty good, but 9 points may not be enough for Vanderbilt. Alabama, 6 over Kentucky. What a game between Kentucky and LSU early in the week. LSU losing by 3 points, but Kentucky, they're still having shooting problems right now, but they've got Oscar Schwebe, one of the players of the year, in the middle, and he's just a rebounding machine. He's very Dennis Rodman-like after going after that ball. The transfer from Bob Huggins' West Virginia squad. Alabama, 6-point favorite. They beat up on some teams early in the year as well, too. They beat Houston when Houston was the number 1 team in the country a few weeks back. Florida lost to Texas A&M last week at home. 7.5-point favorite versus Georgia. Georgia got a home win over Auburn. Rivalry in Mississippi. Mississippi State, 5-point favorite over Mississippi. Tennessee on the road, 17.5. They may be the best SEC team in the league right now because their defense is suffocating. 17.5, a lot on the road. Kind of similar to what I say about the NFL. 126.5 the total. Texas A&M off their win at Florida. LSU, LSU playing well. They can shoot the ball. Defensively, they may struggle a little bit. 139.5 there. And then Auburn, who lost to Georgia, they're only a 2-point favorite versus Arkansas. Arkansas got the win over Missouri. Did not cover the 7.5. And then we hit the WCC, one of the best conferences that nobody knows about. BYU at USD, 4.5-point favorite there for my guy Steve Lavin at San Diego, 148.5. St. Mary's nearly had the game against Gonzaga. Wow, what a game that was. Actually, San Francisco. But St. Mary's, 16.5 versus Portland. Gonzaga, they had USF. They were down to USF, and USF ends up losing the game at the buzzer. But 8-point favorite at Santa Clara this afternoon. Pepperdine, 7.5 versus UOP. Pepperdine has been playing very well in this conference. And Loyola Marymount, 3 versus USF. San Francisco nearly had that game against Gonzaga. And then a couple more will hit. The American Conference, 2 games there. Temple and Tulane. Memphis has played well versus East Carolina. And then the Mountain West Conference, my alma mater, San Jose State, got a couple big wins on the road. Lost at Boise State. They've got Nevada Reno, who's played well this year. They're a 1.5-point underdog. San Diego State, right now the class of the Mountain West, 8.5 at Wyoming. Colorado State, 5.5 versus Fresno State. Fresno State upended New Mexico. Took them off the ranks of the undefeated early in the week as a 4-point underdog. Boise State, off their San Jose State win, 1.5 versus Utah State. Played well. And New Mexico, after that loss Fresno, they've got a very good UNLV team coming into Albuquerque to take on the Lobos in the pit in Albuquerque, 149.5 the total there. And then finally, last 2 conferences, Missouri Valley Conference and the Atlantic 10, did not get to them. We saw them during the week. The A10, Davidson, VCU, Fordham, St. Joe's, LaSalle, Rhode Island, George Mason, Loyola Chicago, UMass at George Washington, St. Louis and St. Bonaventure. St. Louis playing very well in the A10. And then Richmond and Duquesne We did not update the Mountain West, so I'm going to give you the not the Missouri Valley Conference. I'm going to give you the Missouri Valley Conference schedule right now for today, because that is one of the top conferences. Southern Illinois at Northern Iowa. Southern Illinois, 1.5-point favorite. Illinois, Chicago. Indiana State's playing very well. They're 14-point favorite. Illinois State at Evansville. Illinois State, the road favorite. Bradley, 15 over Valparaiso. Belmont, 2-point favorite over Missouri State. That's going to be a pretty good matchup. And then Drake, a 9-point favorite over Murray State. Of course, Murray State famous for having John Morant there as well, too. But these were the scores from Thursday night. So, and then finally, before we get out of here, the DeMar Hamlin update. We told you he came off the ventilator, 100% breathing on his own, communicated with doctors, medical professionals, talked with family, Zoomed with teammates in Buffalo yesterday. That place is going to be lit on Sunday. I do not want to be the Patriots going into that atmosphere. I'm sure they're happy for DeMar Hamlin, but that's going to be a rough atmosphere for them as well. All right. 26-23 year-to-date, 17-4 in the NBA. I'm going to give you one best bet, and then don't forget the best bet segment will be online. It'll be at 11 a.m. Eastern today, 8 a.m. Pacific on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. But I'm going to give you one to start right now. The best bet. The Villanova Wildcats are favored by 2.5 against Xavier. Take Xavier as the underdog, plus 2.5. Don't know what time that game is. I will tell you right now. I believe it's later. It is 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific. I know a lot of people will be watching football, but Xavier ranked 18th in the country. They are going to go into Villanova, 12-3 this year, plus 2.5 for Xavier in that game, 4:30 Eastern, 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. We will have the rest of the best bet segment posted, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Speaking of which, thanks to everybody on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. All your comments, support over the year, last year as we restarted the podcast up. Bigger and better things as we start the second week of 2023. Let's start today with a big day in college basketball, 2 NFL games, some hockey, and some NBA as well, too. All right, we'll get to the hockey a little bit more tomorrow as we ran out of time today. But that's going to do it for me. I'm Vasu Vaddiparty. This has been the VPartySports Podcast. We will see you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific, a full NFL preview, little NBA, little NCAA, little NHL. But wild cards galore, number one seeds are up in the air, positioning in the playoff structure. Of course, Buffalo and Cincinnati, they're not going to have an equal number of games, so coin flips may be involved. You usually don't get to that until the 9th tiebreaker. If you want to fall asleep, read the NFL tiebreaker procedures. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. I'm Vasu Vaddiparty. This is the VPartySports Podcast for this Saturday morning. Have a great day. Good luck with your games. We will